Hey Starseeds, welcome to Starseed Energetics. My name is Ashtara, mission to bring you some of the highest frequency content. I've been frozen in this Mercury retrograde, the most intense one I've ever experienced. And before I get into the reading, I would like to invite you to tune into your heart's field, ground your energy to the earth, run the cosmic energy, and from that space, take full deep breaths, because more so than anything, my readings are energy transmissions, and everything else that you can interpret on a rational level, that's just a minor reflection of what's going on with your mind, but a lot of deeper work goes on during these readings. So yeah, just detach from any expectations you came into this reading with, and be fully open-minded to what you can pick up from the energy, from the interpretations. Anything that triggers you, it can all serve you in the highest possible way. Those are my intentions. If you like the transmissions that I give, you can check out my Patreon, where I put a lot of work into it, a lot of exclusive content. And please like this video, comment, or subscribe if you want to help out my channel. And let's get into your reading. I'll try to give you an extensive overview of what's going to go on in this month, but these readings are actually timeless, so even if you find this reading after July, it's totally applicable. You're probably experiencing the remnants of whatever occurred in July of 2021, whether that's 3 months later, 6 months later, or 3 years later. So Andromedan influence and Pleiadian influence and Orion influence, Lyran influence. I might as well just say the whole galaxy by this point. So inviting the highest level of guidance, counsels for the group that is listening to this reading. All right, okay, this card popped out earlier. This is just the original Rider-Waite, the super original one where it's like discolored. This is the Eight of Pentacles. This came out before, but I kind of ignored it, but it came out again. So this is a month of putting in the work. Yes, it makes sense because we just went through a huge retrograde. So you would have been able to really see clearly what was holding you back from making the next moves. Most likely you were forced to kind of get into terms with the kind of identity constructs that you had about yourself, the self-perception that was outdated as well. You must have been reviewing those people, situations, and not only just on a surface level, but on a deeper level, why you're attracting those people, why you're attracting those situations. You were going deep into reflecting the reality, perception, or interaction as a whole through this time period until you came into this reading. This is probably just when it's shifting now. You just like broke through a puzzle. You broke through a veil of illusion that you had about yourself. It could be that you already were outdated in terms of you set your goals precisely, frequency, resonance, precisely to this point, and then it's kind of like, okay, when I get to this level, then I'll figure out the next steps. In the past, that was your kind of intention, and now that you actually maxed out the frequencies that you originally intended as your ultimate goal from maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever. Maybe there's remnants of what you don't see happening yet, but that's just the next level. So you are being called to tune into the next layer. Most people are probably working through that like 7 to 8 year cycle. So you're finding similar patterns, and even people who are coming to your life right now, you're finding that you're meeting with people who remind you of people that you knew from 7, 8 years ago that seem to be coming into your life, but on a more evolved level. So it's like a different octave of the same kind of soul frequency of those people who are no longer in your life, that you cut out of your life probably. And you're gonna see like they remind you of those older people somehow. Whether it is how they look, how they dress, how they act, how they talk. Like there's some frequency similar to people who you left behind like literally a cycle ago, and this egoic growth stages of 7 years. And your task is to see what's different about this iteration of them and see what you want to do differently. You can build it again. What are the lessons in this situation? You want to be very mindful and curious. Do not push away people just because they remind you of some people that you date, that you saw in the past, or that you were friends with in the past, or that you were dating in the past. But more so be wide open and awake and curious as to like, okay, here's a new version of that frequency. What is that like? And how can they serve me? How can I serve them? What can I heal from my past memories when this is like all coming up together? And don't project this previous version of that frequency to this new packaging that it comes in, because it's a different octave. It's a different octave. Like, if you think about it, lead and diamonds made out of the same carbon structure, completely different. So don't assign a series of character traits just because somebody reminds you of somebody else from the past. Again, there's this kind of alchemy in the energy that has been occurring throughout those cycles of your matrix. You're being called to look at what kind of codependent dynamics that you have with your, first of all, your behavioral patterns, your work, and your relationships. So you could be calling in, let me just get some clarifiers. You could have a pattern of exactly what I said, projecting negative traits from a similar soul frequency in that kind of outer reality as having the same quality as you had encountered in the past. You have to learn how to clear these past wounds and memories about a certain hue or spectrum of frequency. I hope this makes sense. It's almost like when, say, for example, if a shiitake mushroom looks like a mushroom and then psilocybin mushrooms look like mushrooms, and then you're automatically like associating, oh, this is a mushroom, so it must make me hallucinate. Like, no, it depends what mushroom it is. And so that's what I'm saying is like, one oversoul, or let's just group it as an oversoul because it's the easiest way for me to put it. I don't want to get too technical, but I know that if I say the word oversoul, then you'll kind of understand. Will have byproducts of different incarnations in different humans, and just because it comes from that same branch of frequency, say, let's say it's very niche, like an aquatic Pleiadian parallel life human comes into your reality and there's something so familiar about that person, be careful, be mindful not to assign a whole codex of projections just because that frequency is familiar. It's also like, say, salt and sugar look extremely alike, but it's very different in nature. But there's a whole notion of you learning to cultivate very strong boundaries on the third dimensional and on the astral. There's all these like karmic pulls and you're going into different stages. So there's people who are codependent, but it's completely negative. But then there's people who are capable of being codependent, but if you draw the right boundaries and if you manage it properly, and if you can cultivate this level of protection around your own field, and this occurs by becoming so aware of your own energetic field that you know precisely what is not yours or what is essential to your soul's frequency. And then there's also this other notion of being able to discern psychic influences, which psychic information is coming from your higher kind of interface versus lower influences. not all psychic information is the same. So it feels like you're going into this deep refinement when it comes to boundaries and relationships, and also the inner kind of tides of your own energy field. But this is all kind of learning to discern also what kind of behavioral patterns or thought loops, systems as a whole root cause of a factor is associated with certain outcomes in how you perceive reality. And I know when I say something like this is kind of like a frequency transmission is what I mean. It's not supposed to go right through your rational mind. I'm literally, majority of what I'm transmitting to you is based on the telepathic field, and I'm just talking in words, and maybe you are able to understand what I'm saying, but those people are the ones who are actually tuned into my telepathic field, because I know like a lot of things, energies that I'm describing, it's beyond this rationalization of linear constructs of thinking. So what you're going to be doing is learning what kind of core causes or factors or variables can you eliminate as a complete rooting out, almost like weeding out of your field of reality, to get rid of these lower influences, these karmic patterns, this ancestral looping of viewing reality. And this is deep because we've all, as humans, been conditioned to look at reality in such a distorted perception. That is our experience. We're literally conditioned to perceive solidity in a world where nothing is static, and that is our experience. And it's not some kind of a doom. It's more like a blessing when you learn to transcend it. And it's a blessing beyond description when you learn to transcend it. So this is what you're coming to do, and you're tapping into this higher field of being, which allows you to create basically manifestations. And I use that word with caution. I am super mindful about this type of metaphysical concepts, because it can be also a self-perpetuating loop. Not that anybody has negative intentions by using those types of concepts, but it can just be a trap if you're not authentic in your perception of it. But anyway, looks like you're cleaning up and fine-tuning your boundaries and learning how, in which scenario can you give and receive. And I will say this, a lot of people, a lot of starseeds, a lot of high density beings, probably people who are not entirely comfortable with this earthly existence after years and years of seeking, probably are the people who can relate to this. Definitely not people who've just been born into complete grounded comfort, I would say. But for those who have literally been making more sense of reality since the COVID type of stuff happened, and things are starting to make more sense to you than before, or like it seems less of a chaos than before it happened, because at least it's reflecting how all of this is, that word I cannot express properly because okay, for those who feel like life is finally starting to make visceral sense after 2020, those types of people are the people who will find themselves in quite a distorted relationship dynamic, a lot of codependency, a lot of encounters with narcissistic individuals, finding yourself questioning what is wrong with me sometimes. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that your remainder of consciousness that is not completely embodied in this human body, because there's like levels of consciousness that is parallel in other dimensions, basically, and higher dimensions, and it's operating on a different system than your human consciousness, and it's constantly syncing and synthesizing the information. You guys have a relationship dynamic patterning from civilizations where it's literally just pure unconditional love, and so you basically incarnate with lack thereof boundaries that are very difficult to cultivate. You literally come here and you pour your heart out into people. You jump into relationships looking at their highest facets. It's almost like that Hadrian energy or Cassiopean energy as well, where all the spectrums of emotions are relative to spectrums of love. And I know, sure, all emotions basically are facets of love, but spectrums of non-dual love, basically non-polarized love. And then you live through this life, and then you literally just see certain positive facets that you remember the higher densities, and then you can't really tune into the darkness of people. And you're just learning to do that, and then you're learning to accept the darkness in yourself and all of that. That's basically why you guys have codependent relationship issues, is because you're streaming the behavioral patterns of relationship dynamics coming from civilizations where all you have are collective soul groups, where all relationships are 100% giving and receiving in balance without trying. So you are actually taking that facet and you're refining that into how to do that on Earth properly. And it took you a long time to actually learn how to hone that energy. And you don't have to blame yourself. It's just that you originate from star systems, civilizations, constructs, societal constructs that originate from non-polarized love spectrums. So definitely not your fault, but you're just learning how to fine-tune those boundaries. And for example, you learn to witness people's behaviors, analyze them properly and correctly, and assign them into the right roles in your life, right categories in your life properly. So for example, if you meet a self-centered person who is a great friend in their own way, for example, like they're very supportive, they're very cheerful, they're there to help you when you need it, but let's say this person is quite self-centered, then instead of taking that personally, you just realize and accept, okay, this person can fit into this category of my life, and I will assign maybe say 5 to 10% of my future timeline creation to co-create with this person, but you're not going to give them like 60% of your co-creative timelines. I'm just using that as an example. And say many other people, for example, who may have more and depending on the DNA, the soul DNA, the character DNA, and the genetic DNA of each person, you learn to assign it in that way. If the person who's collaborating with you, say you see that their intentions are not always on point, then you simply can decide that, okay, it's still great to co-create with them because they're very creative and they're very talented and skilled, but I will need to put a more strict monetary approach to this so that this monetary exchange creates a very clear boundary between you two. And then if the person is completely pure, completely open-hearted, then that person you can just completely open yourself up to. Does that make sense? All right, so I will read a couple of oracle cards. Keepers of the Earth, the Great Gathering. trust the niggle, and play. There's a strong ancestral activation going on. This is not a surprise for me in my personal life, in my surrounders' life, in my surrounding people's lives, and in my clients' lives. This is a huge theme going on right now, is like ancestral clearing. But there's one thing that I want to share, is that it's not just about your genetic ancestors. And actually you, and as one of my mentors have pointed out, it's like you can't separate your genetic ancestors from your star ancestors. They're all like one thing at the end of the day, and we're all basically coming from, you know, eons of galaxies away, all of us with different frequencies. And so this is just a reminder that you are really activating that star lineage and your ancestral clearance, and the kind of split that you had between this genetic human body versus this kind of stellar influence. And as you clear like ancestral patterns, this actually calls you deeper into coming into union with your soul family. A lot of ancestral obstacles or obstructions, if you don't do the work to clear those patterns in your ancestral lines, it also acts as a barrier from coming together with your soul family for obvious reasons, like reflecting one or the other. The cleaner the ancestral lineage you have with your Akashic field, the more you can resonate clearly with the actual soul family members. And I feel like some of them are yet to show up in your life. Like some of them are like right on the corner. Even if you feel like you've already met your people, there's like deeper and deeper connections around the corner of your timelines, because you're doing the work, and because the time is now, and because the time is right, and because the mission is clear. The mission is getting clearer and clearer. Your mission is getting clearer and clearer, whether you realize it or not. That's what's occurring. And it's very clear that you will know them when you meet them. And again, this comes and circles back into the advice that I gave earlier. If you so feel like some people that comes into your life reminds you of somebody from your past, please try not to project those qualities onto that person. It's a let's say you had a toxic friend or a toxic partner or a toxic collaborator, co-creator, employment relation, whatever. Let's say that you had some kind of toxic relationship before, and this was through that cycle of like 7 years. Like I would say this is like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe 5. All the work that you've done since then was the clearing of those darkness traits in the other person as well. So usually people come in waves. Like the incarnation on the human level that you meet, there's multiple versions of them, and when they jump in frequency, sometimes it's like, unless that person evolves so fast, as fast as you do, the soul expression comes very similar frequency again, but just in another person, but they're the more evolved version. So again, the advice is to trust your intuition, be mindful and be wide open, and see if there's anything you missed in that healing cycle, because you can shift it automatically. And you're at a point now where actually you have the ability to dictate to a certain degree, like 60 to 70% of how the other person shows up. Like you have a very co-creative direct vote into the version of the other person that you call in to your experience. Say there's like 10,000 probable timelines in your field of reality of that person and how they show up, how they act. So you could really, with your level of power, choose which version of them you call in. But then it also depends on your level of soul contract and what lessons you've got to learn about yourself. If obviously you try again and again to manifest the best possible version of one person and it's not happening, then there's obviously something blindsided that you're not seeing about yourself or the situation or the reflection. And the last card we have here is play. So while you are doing all that work, don't forget to play. This is just a message that comes up a lot for the Starseed peeps, but in essence, looks like with your soul family, you know, the lines are blurred because you're constantly working on something greater than yourselves, but play is part of that creation. So don't forget to do fun things. Don't forget to go out and have fun and define what fun means to you at this point of your life. Don't try not to have a preconditioned set of activities that you used to think are fun. Things can get outdated pretty quickly when you evolve as fast as you and I do. So make a list of like 10 things that you think could be fun that you haven't tried before. Obviously, you can use some of the activities that you used to do before, but try to see if there's anything new that's fun for you at this point of your evolution. Maybe it's learning something new or something you've never tried before. That sense of novelty can really help you tune in deeper to your newer frequencies. And when you get in a routine, for example, when you're getting into that work mode, it's often that you repeat the same activities again and again. So try to bring a sense of novelty through the way you play. That's a good way to bring that spontaneity into your life and not get stuck in a routine when you're like, you know, gonna get up and meditate and do the breath work and then do exercise and then read a book and do the work. Like, that really works because it's liberating on many facets. Like, but just make sure you put in new frequencies, new activities, like, and don't assume that you're the same person that you were last week, last month. Like, always be curious about who you are, because you're always changing. Your avatar is always changing. Your consciousness is always changing. Your physical body is always changing. Your psychic abilities, how they interface with the world, is always changing. So get to know yourself every day. It's like, take yourself on a journey to get to know yourself every day. Like, how am I feeling? What am I doing? What do I like? What do I want to do for fun? It's just get to know yourself. It's like, get a new person. Okay, I hope that this has been helpful. Again, if you enjoy my readings, you can check out my Patreon and you can support me by just being there. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. I'll try to upload that vlog and do something with it. I hope I'm gonna do that soon. Okay, bye. Love you.